Hey everybody, this is Chris McAdoo, the Chief Experience Officer for Knoxville Entrepreneur Center. Happy to be here, excited to be in the room for Techstars, and I am joined by Lance Adler. Lance, tell us a little bit about yourself and the company that brought you to Techstars.
Sure. I'm Lance Adler. I'm the founder and CEO of Witching Hour. So I went to school for electrical engineering, UCF, and then when I was in school, I had a bunch of companies. One energy drink company, snack food company, hot dog stand that I ran at a local bar in college called Between the Buns.
That's amazing.
Perfect name, right? Yeah, good branding. And then I was working for a utility company and thought that was starting a lot of fires and thought that maybe there was a problem there that could be fixed. So I started Witching Hour about a year ago, and that's how I got here today.
Okay, so Lance, tell me, as someone who, your background is in electrical engineering, right?
Yeah, electronics engineering.
So while you were in school, you had several companies that I would say are a little bit different from Witching Hour. Tell me about your start as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I started when I was 16 in high school making hookahs out of coconuts. And for some reason, my parents supported that. So I did that for a couple of years. It was really awkward because I was too young to like communicate with like these head shops and stuff that would sell hookahs. So my dad would pretend to be me and call these head shops and sell them hookahs. And people bought them. So
wow. And then in college, you actually operated several like snack food companies.
Yeah. So I started an energy drink company when I was 18.
Okay. We
ran it out of college out of a small bakery. We eventually grew it to like a 3,000 square foot facility that was like a turnkey manufacturing facility. We were even talking to like really big retailers like Vitamin Shop about doing like national rollouts of the drink. So we kind of had success with it, but they ultimately pulled out the rug and kind of nixed the deal. And we had already built this huge facility that we couldn't afford. So
okay.
Yeah. And actually that same week that they pulled the deal out, we our biggest existing customer, which was Lucky's Market, a big chain in Florida, they filed bankruptcy the same week. So we had no revenue coming in. We had our biggest deal that was supposed to go through, got pulled, and then we were stuck with this facility that was costing us a lot of money a month.
Yeah.
We couldn't afford, so we ended up closing the business down.
Well, so you've been through the fire, quite literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
Tell me about, you're sitting in your apartment in New York City, and you are working for PG&E, an
Right.
energy company.
Right. Yeah.
And tell me the thing that you noticed that you thought like, wait a second, can I do something about this?
Yeah. So I was with a company called Leidos, and we were contracted as engineering services to PG&E. And I was the guy who was like, anytime they would replace a pole or do some kind of like underground, whatever engineering design, anything with like poles and circuits, whatever, I'd be the guy that would like design it and then put all the costs together. So I had to begin to understand like what makes things expensive and what makes them cheap, right? So I learned that, the primary way that people are getting rid of wildfires or preventing wildfires for utilities, they're building new infrastructure, right? So I gained insight into what makes that infrastructure expensive and how we can cut that out.
Cool. So Witching Hour, tell me a little bit about specifically the technology that you are introducing and looking to grow here through like the Techstars program.
Yeah. So it's kind of two parts. We have a robot that goes on the power line that applies this insulation material. So we're innovating on that side, and then we're also innovating on the side of the material. It's a new material for power lines. So there's two kind of innovation paths there, and we're building them both out in Knoxville.
Okay, so both hard tech.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the technology behind. We'll start with the robot.
Sure.
So tell me a little bit about what got you there, and like when you say robot, what do you mean?
Yeah, so I can't go into too many details on what that exactly means because we're kind of in the weird IP stage right now, especially the material as well. But the robot makes it much cheaper to install. So you don't need a huge crew out there. You don't need bucket trucks. You can kind of reach anywhere, right? So in California specifically, a lot of the wires are flowing through very rural areas, mountainous areas, so they're hard to reach. So typically if you would want to do work out there, you would need helicopters, cranes, very expensive. It costs like $15,000 to rent a crane for a day. So with a robot, you don't need any of that stuff. You can access those really remote lines. It makes it much easier. And it also helps with pulling permits. Permits are very expensive. And you can pull less permits using a robotic installer.
And what does that do for the safety of the crew that would have been
right? Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. It's much safer because they're not touching anything, so they're staying as far away from the power lines as they can, so it's much safer. The further you are away, obviously, the safer it is.
And will you have an opportunity to also create essentially the training programs built around using these robots?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we're offering this as a service, right? So we'll go to a utility company and say, hey, we're going to do X many miles. Instead of like licensing the robot, we'll actually go out there as a service with our service crew and go out there and perform the installation. So we'll be in charge of training our staff internally on that.
On the tech side, I understand the safety aspects and, of course, the efficiency and effectiveness of the robots. But tell me a little bit about, on the materials side, what it means to have, the insulation from Witching Hour, in action on these power lines.
Yeah, so existing power infrastructure is very old. I'm sure you can imagine driving down your street, look at the old wooden poles. A lot of those poles are sometimes 100 years old, right? And they're not getting replaced very often. And they can't handle any more weight typically, right? They're kind of maxed out. So the current insulation that's on the market, if you were to throw that on an old power line, it would snap, or old power pole, it would snap. It wouldn't be able to handle it. So our insulation is very light. So if you throw it over existing power lines, the old infrastructure, the old poles from the 20s, 40s, they can handle it no problem.
So what you're introducing is both a technology that is good for the people that are served in terms of homeowners, business owners, communities, as well as the folks that are servicing those communities.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big win-win because the utilities, every time they start a fire, they pay billions of dollars. I mean, a lot of times they're killing people with these fires. They pay fines for that, obviously, and they're paying out billions out of pocket for all the damages, right? So they have a huge economical stake in that. They don't want to start fires because it could bankrupt them. PG&E, for example, was bankrupted in 2018 or 2019 from a fire they started, largest utility at the time. Wow. So no utility is really immune to that. And then on the customer side, rates keep getting jacked up, especially in California, to cover these wildfire costs. So the customers are the ones that end up paying for the wildfires that the utilities start. So it benefits both sides.
So Lance, if folks were to remember one big key thing about you and your mission with Witching Hour, what would that be?
Yeah, I think the way to stop wildfires is prevention. And the easiest way to prevent wildfires from happening is targeting utility ignitions. And at Witching Hour, we're thinking about that every day.
How is coming to Knoxville and being part of the Techstars program, as well as being introduced to sort of like the entrepreneurial community here, how has that affected your growth personally as an entrepreneur, but then as Witching Hour?
Yeah, as an entrepreneur, just being surrounded by that community is really helpful, as an entrepreneur, sometimes it feels like you're at it alone. So it's nice to be surrounded with a community of people that are doing the same thing, facing the same issues, just be able to talk it through. It's really helpful. From Witching Hour standpoint, being introduced to resources like the Tennessee Valley Authority, Knoxville Utility Board, Oak Ridge, the University of Tennessee, all those resources have been great. We're going to be running demos with KUB this week, hopefully, Thursday. So that's critical. I mean, it's being able to work with KUB to string up some material and see if it works, and actually see it, do an eye test and see, hey, this actually works is invaluable. So it's great.
That's awesome. And then what does it mean to you to see an idea come to life?
Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird feeling. I mean, it's one of the best feelings in my opinion. Just being able to see something that you had thought of and dreamt of for so long actually become reality is the best feeling.
That's awesome. Lance, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck with all things with Witching Hour and everything. Where can folks learn more about your company?
Yeah, you can go to our website, witchinghour.io. There's some info on there, and there's also a place for you to subscribe. So if you're interested in keeping up to date with what we're doing, or if you want to see a demo pilot in the future, just drop your email there, and we'll get back to you.
Awesome. Lance Adler with Witching Hour. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.